Good morning, and welcome to another SaTarotDay with Salon, one half of the Two Pondering Pagans. Got some interesting stuff for this morning, and let's see what the cards say. Alright, so today I'm actually using two decks that we wanted to kind of dive deeper. Let's try that again. To dive deeper using the Tarot of the Abyss. And then another one that I've never used on stream that I really like. It's called the Threads of Fate Oracle. It's the Shadow Edition. It's a really nice deck that can probably give us some homework, some direction on what to actually do about the energy that we see this week. So we'll have a little bit of clarity, which I find interesting because as we head into May, throughout the rest of the month, I believe next Monday is the new moon. So, as parting from the lunar eclipse, we're moving into that new moon phase, which hopefully will bring clarity, which is what the new moon often is about. New beginnings, new starts, very strong time of energy. So excited about that. But again, we'll read from Tarot of the Abyss, and we'll get some shuffling done here. While we do that, I kind of want to talk about shadow work a little bit, because that's going to be a main topic for me and Rook for a little while now. We've both decided that it's a good time in our energy, together and separately, because some of it will be separate but some together, to work on shadow work. And a lot of people ask, well, what does that even mean? And we say it like it's this massive separate piece of life, and it's not. Shadow work is something you do all the time. You may not name it, but it is often beneficial and helpful when you specifically dive into shadow work as a separate thing, as a focus, I guess I should say. And so that's one of the things that we've decided to do, is kind of do it through a focus process to learn more about ourselves that might be kind of pushed back. So we'll go into probably some more detail today on our Sunday stream, to kind of talk about what shadow work is and why, and how it means different things to different people. There's no one right or wrong way to do it. The thing is again, we're always doing some of it. Self-reflection is a really big part of it. But having something to direct your energy and your thought process to is very helpful for shadow work. But by no means is it the only way that exists, or is it the only way that we should ever do it, right? But anyway, so that's something that we're working on, and we'll be sharing a little bit more about. So that's kind of why I'm feeling the Tarot of the Abyss. It's funny because the definition of abyss that you think of when you hear something like Tarot of the Abyss, it kind of sounds like it's just this incredibly difficult and dark and arduous process of the abyss, but it's not. The Tarot of the Abyss is really about separating and lighting the pathway of the things that are in between. It's liminal. So thinking of the abyss less as this negative empty space and more of a liminal junction between what is and what isn't. It kind of helps you understand the Tarot of the Abyss a little bit and why it's a good deck to use for something like shadow work. And this is probably the deck that I will use because I do like using tarot for shadow work to help through some things. So anywho, just a little blurb there. We'll talk more about today on our podcast. So not podcast, I want to call it that, the service, I should say. So let's get started with the read. We're going to shuffle just a few more times. There's no really standard shuffle for me. I kind of just go until I feel like I don't need to go anymore. Sometimes that's 3, sometimes it's much more. But as I've said before, when I do tarot, especially when I'm doing it on video like this, for a quick turnaround and push up to the YouTube, I tend to do a lot of shuffling beforehand. That way, I know the noise can be annoying to some people. Like, it's therapeutic to me to hear the shuffling, but some people it's probably pretty annoying. So try to do as much of it as possible offline. But I feel like there's just a few more shuffles needed. We're going to be looking at this question this week a little bit differently than we have before in the past. We're always doing the weekly read. We're doing weekly energies, which that's still the case. But this week we have a little bit of a question. And our question is, what part of our shadows do we need to work on right now as a collective, as a tribe, as a unit? What part of the universe, or what is the universe saying as it relates to the things we need to go deeper on? And the reason I'm asking that is because, excuse me, last week when we looked at our cards, we had so much fire and action, and we are still in the mode of action. That hasn't changed. But we do need some guidance in how to manage some of the smaller things that are around us. And when we do that, it'll help us work on that action and make sure that those actions are the appropriate actions, for us to do. So this week, again, the question is going to be, what, as a group, as a tribe, as a community, do we need to work on with each other and go from there? So let's get our deck knocked off of the bad energy, and we are going to start pulling a couple of cards. And we will talk about each one as we always do individually, and then at the end we'll pull the clarification. All right, so we're already getting started here. We've got the Five of Cups, so that's going to give us some pretty specific information, right? As to what we're looking at here for the shadow. 5 is always going to be, well, let me not say always. 5 is going to have some shadow work to do with it, regardless of whether you're doing a shadow reading or not. 3 of Swords. We're following the same trend here. This is very interesting. And the 3 of Wands. So, interestingly, I think really what we're looking at here is what we already were talking about. Like, this is self-fulfilling prophecy for me at the moment. I think... I guess we should probably just get started like we normally do, and let's look at the independent, specific meanings of our tarot cards here, and then kind of put them together and roll them together into one whole piece. So, again, our 5 of Cups. 5s are often cards that have these meanings for us that are things we wish we would have done better. They're about change. They're about conflict. They're about, movement forward in a way that or things that are holding us back. I mean, they're about shadow, really. Like, 5s are often about shadow and being uncertain of what to do next and how to really kind of go where we want to go in our life. And in the card, you see a little bit of pain. You see the 5 cups, right? But 3 of them are spilled. What does that mean? Like, our cups are spilled. Well, also you can kind of look at the body language here. We have very frustrated, upset, maybe uncertain, or, oh, why did I do that? That's the feeling that I get from the 5 of Cups. So that is an opportunity to look into your shadow. So our 5 of Cups, in an emotional standpoint or from a water standpoint, this is about regret. This is about things that you wish you would have done or things that you did that you wish you wouldn't have. And it's really a barrier to moving on and going where you need to go next. So from a shadow perspective, the 5 of Cups is really a reminder that you need to look and find what are the things that you regret, or the failures that you have, and address them head on and pull them out. And if they're trauma, you can pull them out and look at them at a distance at first, kind of look at them and see what are they to you and how do they matter to you. And from a shadow work perspective, you need to work through them. And there's lots of ways to do that spiritually. From a psychology standpoint, you need to work through them, through therapy, or at least through talking and having discussions with people to process some of that information. But we're really talking spiritually here, so we'll keep it at that. Spiritually, 5 of Cups, let's look at our failures. Let's look at what we've done so far that's not worked out for us. How is it affecting us, and how do we move past them? So your next card that we have is the 3 of Swords. So Threes are usually about like groups, things together, people together. What's the other? Like, I don't want to say like words together, but excuse me, really about us meeting up and doing things. It's not large groups necessarily. And because this is really from a numerology standpoint, that's the three. Now the Three of Swords has a different meaning. Like, we're going to go into a little bit of detail on that, because I really want to look at what is it that the swords really bring to the table. Swords are an air card, right? And we've talked about that before. Air is really important. And in some traditions, by the way, it is fire too. But in an air tradition, the swords are often themselves challenges, right? But if we look at the card, some of the things that you're going to see is going to make a little bit of sense to you. It's brain, kind of like, I love this brain open up, because this is showing like a vulnerability, which also represents some emotional griefs, some things that are hurting. Maybe a lot of readers will say specific heartbreak, but it's not heartbreak like a relationship heartbreak. It's heartbreak of emotion. This could be the death of somebody. This could be something that's really functioning in a way that's holding you emotionally painful. And oftentimes it can also represent negative self-talk. And since we are talking about shadow work, and our first card is the Five of Cups, I'm going to say this is about you being mean to yourself. You need to stop being mean to yourself. From a shadow work perspective, this is really important that you stop the negative self-talk and the reaffirming yourself in the negative light, and start looking at the things that you do very well. And you can do that through shadow work, right? You're identifying, like the Five of Cups says, what are your regrets? Why do you regret it? Is it giving me any benefit anymore? Like, if I'm still regretting something that happened many years ago, I'm wasting energy on things that have already happened that can't be changed. But I can change the future by changing how I am. So that's going to give me this shadow work of saying, you're working through this process, you're working through these heartbreaks, through these emotional pains, and getting into somewhere that has meaning. And so that's what the energy is about this week. We are self-reflecting. And that's a big deal. Mostly because, we spend so much time, we should be spending so much time on us, treating ourselves well. I mean, be honest. We need to be talking about what we do well. We need to be talking about the things that we do good. But in order to work through shadow work, you have to work through those other things as well, right? You can't just ignore the things you don't like. And that is a trap that a lot of us fall in. Like, being positive doesn't mean not allowing anything that's not positive into your life, or ignoring the things that are not positive and acting like they don't exist, because they exist. And they exist right in front of you. You just have to deal with them. And then you have to forgive yourself too. That's the other thing with regret. So then we look at our wands. Again, we're looking at threes, and threes generally represent groups or movements of things, of possibilities, maybe small group meetings of people. I think three, like three's a crowd, right? But in this case, three is what we want. We want groups. We want things to happen together. So when we look at the Three of Wands, which is for me a fire card, we're talking about expansion. We're talking about things that are allowed to grow together. We're talking about that expansion and that bigness of looking at what's coming up in front of you, right? This, in other words, forward motion, right? Progressing, getting better, getting bigger, having the ability to fill the room with good stuff that works for you. And that also is very important in shadow work. You have to recognize your goals and your progress, and that goalpost is going to move, but when it moves, you've still achieved what it is you've achieved to be where you are. So this week is a little bit different, because I'm directing the energy a little bit more towards specifically shadow work, but that's on purpose. Last week we talked about fire, and our reading was all about fire and action and activity. And now this week we're talking about, it's still action. We still want progress. We still want growth, but we need to maybe repair the staircase a little bit. Maybe we're walking up the ladder that we want to walk up, and we're at a place where we can't close the gap. There's too large of a gap there, and we need to repair the bridge to make it to that other side. And how do you repair a bridge? If I'm here and I need to get here, you do it one plank at a time, right? Put a plank in front of each other, And a staircase, same thing. You put a stair and stair, so you can get to the other side. You can't just jump and hope you make it. You got to prepare and put those things together. And how do you do that with shadow work? You're going to internalize. You're going to look at the regrets of your life, the things that you feel like you maybe didn't do, or it doesn't matter how big or small, but you just got to look at them. You have to identify them first, right? So the Five of Cups is really the regret feeling. You haven't identified them yet. You need to. That's the work. That's the homework right now. Is, maybe part of your negative behavior at the moment is because of something you did a long time ago, and you don't necessarily know how that's affecting your unconscious or your subconscious, however you wish to look at it. But let's pull it up and let's start looking at it. And then with the Three of Swords, we're going to start looking at how are we going to attack it? How are we going to move through this heartbreak that we see, or this emotional drain and strain that we have, because that's where we are right now. A lot of people are feeling that drain this week, that emotional pull down, like, oh, this sucks. Well, we're going to do shadow work. We're going to look at our heart. We're going to look at our group of people. Look at the things that you've accumulated around you. That's part of your group, right? It's not just human beings, not just even animals. It's your things. Now, Three of Swords is often not talking about like what the Pentacles would talk about in groups, but we are talking about your environment. If you have grief, hurt, emotional pain, you adjust your environment, right? So the Three of Swords is really wanting you to take that feeling that you have of whatever heartbreak it is, whatever emotional pain you have. It may be huge. It may be just a little twinge of, and how did you address that? And why do you have regrets about that? And move it into a better place of expansion, into the Three of Wands. Move it into the space of growth and expansion. And do that through looking up, identifying it, pulling it up, working through it, and expanding. And moving into the Three of Wands, the Three of Creations, if I could give it another name. The Three of Ascensions, the Three of Fire, the Three of building, not the physical, but the buildings. The action of building. Let me rephrase it that way. I'm talking too fast. Another thing I do often. The Three of Building, meaning the Three of putting it together and actioning and creating and expanding, right? So let's do a real quick recap before I pull. We'll shuffle a little bit and pull from our other Threads of Fate over here, Oracle. Because I want that specific Oracle card, and I want to see what it says to add to our shadow work here. So let's summarize. Without looking at the independent cards, let's just say the overall grand theme. Identify what it is that you have regrets or wishes that you would have or wishes that you wouldn't have. Identify them, write them down, get them out, because right now you're feeling, whether you know it or not, the expression of heartbreak or emotional pain related to that thing, that regret. And then use it to move through to the next step into the wands, right? Use it to expand and move. That's the general feel of the read this week. So the energies are muted. They're sad. They're emotionally drained. We're emotionally drained. Let's turn that into something that we can actually do, something that we can actually benefit from. And shadow work is a lifelong procedure. It is cyclical. You're doing it all the time, even if you don't know it. And sometimes you're making your shadow darker, for lack of a better term. Sometimes you're making your shadow more integrated. So when you make a concerted effort to look at the shadow, which the cards are very clear about that this week. I couldn't have picked a more appropriate set of cards for defining what shadow work, when shadow work is needed. It would be these. It would be your current status of heartbreak, histories of regrets and things that you should have done that you have not addressed, and how do we move them into expansion and growth and being positive effect for us. And we do that through shadow work, and we do that through self-actualization, self-realization, even just self-looking, internal looking. So that's really where we are right now. Let's look at this in this other deck. This is the Threads of Fate. And if you like these really premium style, like really gorgeous deck, Threads of Fate has a couple. They're really good. They're easy to read. I think they're amazingly made. They're very thick and strong cards. They have Oracle and there are some Tarot, and different kind of additions to them. So, but we're going to pull one after this third shuffle. I feel like we're at the right place here. And we're going to really talk about what these mean and pull an Oracle card. Now, if you're interested, I do want to say 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight, whatever it is, 11 o'clock on the East Coast, right? Rook and I are going to be on doing our Sunday service process so that we can kind of work together on some of those things. And we're going to be talking about shadow work to a degree because it's something that we need to do and we want to do. So we're going to do that. Let's cut this deck though. And right now, let's see what our homework card is. Can you see that? I mean, seriously, I'll post it. Reflect. So reflect. Reflect is one of the first steps, second steps, third steps. It's integrated into all the steps of shadow work. Reflection. Seriously, you could not have picked a better card. This is crazy. Always amazes me sometimes to see some of these things. But anywho, you're going to want to reflect when you're doing shadow work. This week, you're going to want to reflect. You're already feeling the emotional strain, the emotional drain, the emotional pain. And you're already somewhere in there. There's some regrets of things that you think you did wrong or should have done differently. But you know what? You did them. They're done. Or you didn't do them. They're not done. You can't change where they were. But you can identify them. You can identify how they're affecting you. And you can put some things in place to directly counteract them, which is the reflection on the front end of finding it and the reflection on the back end of, you know what? I'm allowed to forgive myself here. I'm allowed to move on. I don't have to hang on to these things. Who and what human being has not screwed something up massively or not massively? But when you spend the time being anxious and worrying about it, you are literally throwing time away. And time is our most precious and most valued commodity that we own, that we can direct. I can choose to give you time. I can choose to take the time away from you that's mine. I can choose to give you my energy or take my energy away. There's a lot of things that maybe I can't choose sometimes, but that is always a choice I can make. So we need to start choosing to use our time for things that are beneficial and that are positive and that we want to use them for. Don't give your time away to regret or to worry or to anxiety, because those are wasteful things that you can't change in the past or things that haven't occurred in the future even to address. So our message today is extremely clear. I'm not sure how clear I deliver it sometimes because I talk really fast and I get really excited in these. So I'm going to recap one more time. Just because I feel like this is such an important process. Remember, we're doing a little bit different of a read this week. It's not just the energies. It is, but it's not just energies. We had a specific question, and it was, what as a collective community, as a group, as a tribe, do we need to start working on to really move forward? And what we got was our answer. We need to identify our emotional pain and strains, and we're feeling it. That's true. It's in the present. But we need to identify it. We need to call it what it is. Hi, your emotional pain. I feel you. You exist. I'm not going to ignore you anymore. Why are you there, emotional pain? You're there, according to the cards, because of some regrets that I've had about things that I've done that I think I did wrong or I should have done, or maybe something that I didn't do. So emotional pain, I've now given you a name, and I'm now starting to look at why you exist related to some of these regrets, emotional pain, and now I want to move forward and expand. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to start with reflection. I'm going to start reflecting on how I felt and how I worried about these things and what they meant to me, and then learn how to forgive myself for them and part of that reflection. And start working through in a specific and directed way, working with the shadow part of myself that I want to integrate back into, not delete, not erase, but integrate. And that is the read for this week. So I hope you found this enjoyable and interesting. If so, please feel free to leave a comment. Or even if you didn't, you can leave a comment. Make sure the comment has a meaning, though. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to hear if you would read differently. I want to hear if you had a different meaning for the cards, or just your thoughts in general about tarot and the discussion today. That is very important for me. But with that, I appreciate you taking your time to spend with me for this half hour, and really hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. Happy shadow working, and hope to see you on our stream later today and every Sunday at 11 o'clock on the Eastern time zone, whether it is standard or daylight savings. We will keep that at between 10:45 and 11. So anyway, thank you, blessed be, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.